This scarf is not a fashion choice. My room is just freezing. Hello, my name is Elise, and this is going to be my last booktube video for 2020. I am going to be looking at my Goodreads stats for this year. I just have my laptop here, so sorry if I'm looking down. I would have sat while looking at this because I feel quite awkward just staring at my laptop while standing, but funny story, my tripod is actually 3 different tripods stacked on top of each other, and they are meticulously stacked so that they reach my height, and I couldn't find out how to unstack them so that they would reach me at a sitting height. So yeah, we're just going to be standing with my laptop. Anyway, I read a lot more this year than I have in the past years, probably more than all the years combined. So I'm interested to see all my Goodreads stats. I'm filming this on December, what is the month? Yeah, December 30th. So there's one more day technically left in the month. I have a feeling I will not be finishing any more books this month, so hopefully this is reflective of my entire year. So yeah, let's get into it. So according to Goodreads, I've read a total of 166 books in 2020. This includes novels, both fiction and nonfiction, audiobooks, graphic novels. I did count quite a few graphic novels in here. I counted the individual issues of the Avatar comics, but you know, whatever. I used to be very meticulous with my Goodreads goals and like only counted physical books, but I have decided that that's not the way I want to count my reading, because all the other reading I do still counts as reading, not just physical books like these. So yeah, I've included those this year. So of these 166 books, I have read 44,405 pages. I don't really know how that counts with audiobooks, because sometimes I put the actual audiobook version and sometimes I put the book version. I don't really know. I don't actually pay attention. I just kind of randomly put them on there. So yeah, somewhere in that range, I've read 44,000-ish pages, and that is a lot. I'm gonna look back at some of my previous years. Yeah, so last year, 2019, I read 17 books compared to the 166 this year. And that was only 5,623 pages. And I'm clearly impressed with myself for reading so much more this year, because yeah, I definitely have never reached such a high amount of books by the end of the year. And just for some more reference, 2018, I read 36 books, which I thought was totally a lot. And I still think that's a lot, but you know, this year was way more than that. But yeah, those 36 books were 11,026 pages. And then in 2017, I read 19 books, which was 5,459 pages. And I'm trying to get back to one year where I read the most besides this year. That makes sense? Okay, yeah, that was in 2016. I read 50 books, which was the most I've ever read besides this year again, and that was 13,821 pages. So yeah, clearly I have read so much more than I've ever read in my life. 44,000 pages in over 160 books is clearly ridiculous, and I'm not sure if I'll ever get that much again, because with the whole pandemic, I've definitely had more time, and it was unusual circumstances, and also just the newness of booktube really inspired me. But I'd still like to try to read, maybe not that much, but you know, somewhere high up there, because now that I see that I can do that, I would like to keep trying, but also I don't want to, you know, burn out with reading, because I see that a lot on Twitter and booktube and just all over the book community. So looking at some more stats, my shortest book was 61 pages, and it was a novella called Coffee Boy. I kind of like this one. I think I gave it 3 stars. Maybe we should look at it because I wrote a whole review. Give me a second. Okay, yeah, so I did give this novella 3 stars, and it's about a trans man who develops some feelings towards his very supportive coworker. And I remember thinking that that element of the book was really good, and just the discussions about confronting ignorance was great, but I didn't really like the way that the relationship progressed, probably because it was only 61 pages and that wasn't, you know, a lot to develop a relationship. The longest book I read was actually an audiobook, but technically in the page numbers it was 592 pages, and this was Stamped from the Beginning. I did struggle a bit with this, even though it was an audiobook, because it was just pure history and I really struggle with comprehending history. But I think I'd like to try the abridged version stamped, because even though it's geared more towards, I think, a teenage or younger audience, something like that, I think it might be easier for me to comprehend, because I've always struggled with history, but I think it's important and I'd really like to pick that up again, because I'm not sure if I got too much out of Stand from the Beginning, just because it was very dense, and again, I am not good with historical texts. The average book length for me in 2020 was 267 pages. I think for a lot of people that would probably be pretty short, but I tend to like shorter books because I like books that I could read in maybe a day or two. Not one for longer books. They kind of stress me out, because if I can't finish it in a day or two, oftentimes I just don't end up finishing it. Right now I'm reading a book that's over 600 pages and I've been reading it since October and I'm not even halfway done. So yeah, I get bored of long books pretty quickly, so I think that average book length makes much sense for me. The most popular book I've read, which was read by another 3.5 million people, was The Kite Runner, which I really enjoyed. It was very hard to get through, not because it was bad, just because it was so emotional and dense, but I really enjoyed it. And then the least popular book I read, which was read by another 30 people, was called Choosing Life. This was an arc I got off of NetGalley. It ended up being the third book in a series, and I didn't know that, and I haven't read the other 2 books in the series, but it ended up being really good, even though I hadn't read the other previous books in the series, and I really enjoyed it. It was about mental health and friendship, and yeah, I always like books under those topics. If you notice that my camera changed at all, that's because I accidentally just kicked my tripod. So my average rating for 2020 was 3.8 stars, and that's probably on the lower end of my ratings throughout the years. I've definitely tried to be more critical with my readings, because I just am reading a lot more, so there's more books for me to compare them to, and usually I'm the kind of person who will give like every book 4 or 5 stars. Not this year though, because I've realized that all those 4 and 5 star ratings that I've given in the past don't really reflect the way that I felt towards books. The highest rated book on Goodreads that I've read this year was Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This is a memoir by the victim of Brock Turner. I'm sure we've all heard about that in the news before. It was fantastic. I listened to both the audiobook and read the book. Highly recommend if you can deal with that kind of topic, because it is a very graphic book, as it is Chanel Miller's own personal experiences, but otherwise it was a fantastic memoir. So my first review of the year was for We Were Liars by E. Lockhart, and I gave it a good 2 stars. Let me just read my short review very quickly. It says, I've read this twice now. The whole mystery part wasn't that mysterious. The writing was cringy. The characters were unlikable. The ending wasn't surprising. I hated everyone's relationships with each other. Please, no more books about rich white people on fancy private islands. So I guess that very much sums up my feelings of the first review of the year. So my last review of the year was for a book called The Sun Does Shine. This is a memoir about someone who was on death row, and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars, but one thing I really thought was interesting about this book was the author, Anthony Ray Hinton. His attorney, the person who fought for him to get off of death row, his name is Bryan Stevenson, and he wrote a different book, Just Mercy, and I actually got to meet him, which was really cool. So it was, kind of cool to hear that little name drop, because I've met that person before. Okay, this is just kind of random. I just found more random Goodreads stats. I don't know, I get lost on the Goodreads website. I don't know what I clicked, but here we are. So yeah, it looks like most of the books I've read have been published in the 2000s. Just a little fun thing, I guess. Here's a chart of how many books I read throughout the months. Wow, I read 50 books apparently in June, but half of those books were just Avatar comics. So yeah, I don't know how much that counts, but whatever. And then also in, what's the month after June? July, I read 34 books, and a lot of those were actually books, like novels, not just graphic novels. So that's pretty impressive. I don't know how I ever did that. The most books besides this year that I've read in 1 month was back in 2016, and I read 9 books in May. I've definitely increased by so much. Even this month in December, I felt like I didn't read that much, but checking this chart thing, I've read a whole 11 books, which is a lot. So yeah, I've definitely improved so much. Just another cool thing to see while looking at this data is how much my reading increased specifically when I started booktube, which was May of this year. In May, I read 19 books in May this year, which is a lot, clearly. But just the month before that, I read 2 books in April. March, I read 1 book, and that was for school. February, I read 1 book, and that was for school. And in January, I read 2 books. So yeah, clearly I've read so much more since starting booktube, which I think is super cool. I guess the last little data thing would be pages. Yeah, same thing. Clearly I read so much more as soon as booktube started. In April, right before I started booktube, I read 522 pages. And then right after that, in May, when I started booktube, I read 5,423 pages. So yeah, overall, I think that booktube has been a great use of my time because it's really rekindled my love for reading. And that is the end of my reading stats for 2020. It's been a fantastic year for reading for me. Not a fantastic year for literally anything else, but it's been good for reading. I've read a lot of great books. I've met a lot of great people through this community, so I am grateful for that. I cannot wait for 2021 and what that brings. So thank you again for watching. Goodbye. Oh my God.